the Oris ProPilot X Caliber 400. That's our watch today, and I am very excited because I've had this lent to me by a friend. Thank you, Jamie. And I gotta say, I think this watch is pretty impressive. So let's get into it. We're going to go through the facts of this watch, the fit, the movement, and just my overall likes, dislikes in terms of the overall package of it. So the case is titanium with an Oris Caliber 400 movement. The dial is blue in this particular watch, but it also comes in grey and salmon. If I had to say, I'd say the blue is probably my favorite. Lume, well, it's not that great. It's probably just a smidge, as someone would jokingly call it. Lens is sapphire. Strap is titanium bracelet, which we will definitely get into. Water resistant to 100 meters. Dimensions 39 by 47 millimeters. Thickness is 12 millimeters with a lug width of 20 millimeters. Crown is screw down, and the warranty is 10 years. Now the price in Monopoly Australian money is $6,500, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. So the fit of this watch, now as I said, a friend of mine has lent this, so it's been fitted to his wrist, which, you know, as a gent is slightly bigger than mine, and so on my wrist, as you'll see in the picture, it's kind of loosely fitting, if it's fitted correctly, it's going to look nice on my wrist. It's going to fit pretty well, particularly with my wrist size, which is about that 17.5 centimeter, which is by all accounts not a badly sized wrist. It's not an itty bitty wrist, as Jenny L would call it. It's not a ginormous wrist. It tends to be able to fit most watches and watch sizes, which makes me a very lucky person, or a very unlucky person if it just means I've got way more watches to choose from. But the overall fit on the wrist is pretty great, and it is in large part, I must say, due to this bracelet. As the watch is titanium, it's super light, and the bracelet has these amazing tapered links, and this kind of, it's almost like a retro futuristic look to it. I don't know. I mean, that sounds a bit like an oxymoron, or just not quite right, but that's the best way I reckon I can describe it. And because of the unique shape of the bracelet, it hugs your wrist and fits, honestly, like a glove. The movement of this watch, because I think, as you know, I'm not a movement person per se. Just to say, as a brand new watch enthusiast, in the last 12 months, I'm on a steep learning curve. So I'm trying to learn as much as I can about movements, what they mean, what they are, how they work, etc. So I'm not an expert at movements, but I know people are very excited by this movement. And so let's have a chat about it in a little bit more detail. As I said, there's a lot to like. The 400 is kind of like a workhorse movement. So while there's a lot of matte and brush finishing, and it's not, I guess, the most extravagant watch to look at, as is the movement on the back, it is beating away at 28,800 BPH, and the 400 has 21 jewels that keep the movement running smoothly. There's the standard 3-hand drive and a date function, and the date features an instant rollover at midnight that snaps over with a good old authoritative click. I've tried this, it's pretty cool. I didn't realize what it was at the time, I just kind of really noticed it, and then in my research I was like, aha! You pull out the crown and you can hack the seconds hand for precision time setting. And it's super cool in the sense that it's got 120 hour, it's a 5-day power reserve. That's whopping. I would love a 5-day power reserve, particularly on my Panerai, which I love to wind, but at 3 days I find myself winding it more often than not. Now, of course, that's a manual, this is an automatic, but you get the drift, right? So they achieve the power reserve through the use of the twin barrel system, each barrel containing its own independent mainspring, and each provide a 2.5-day power movement. That's pretty extraordinary, given the size of the watch as well. It's got anti-magnetic components, resulting in a more robust movement, and by using more than 30 non-ferrous components, the watch can be exposed to stronger than normal amounts of magnetism without going out of whack. If you look closely at the movement, you can get a glance of the silicon escape wheel and the anchor. Now, I don't have any great macro photography equipment here, so I'm not going to be able to give you that look, unfortunately. One day, it's on the list, guys. We're still on a budget here, but I'm slowly working on it. But if you look closely, you'll be able to see it, which is quite great, quite interesting and extraordinary. An accuracy rating of -3 to +5 seconds per day, which is better than a chronometer. But this is why I guess people kind of really love this watch, and with Oris, they've got a big fan base because that's not the only thing it comes with. It comes with a 10-year manufacturer's warranty, which is pretty extraordinary. And that's also the service interval. If you're worried about investing in a brand new movement by Oris of this caliber, I don't think you have to, because they're giving you a 10-year warranty and they're telling you don't have to service it for 10 years, which I think is actually quite extraordinary. Now, as someone who's only just learnt when you're meant to service your watch, because I was talking to a watchmaker recently, actually in the Omega store in Sydney, and he was giving me a little lesson, which was quite interesting. A 10-year service interval is pretty good, guys. If you position the rotor in just the right position and take a glance through the case back, you can look into the eyes of the mascot, the Oris Bear himself. Again, I'm sorry, I'll try my best with my limited equipment, but if you can get your hands on the watch, even if you go to the store to look at it, I think you should give that a pretty good look because it's quite funky to see. So let's talk about likes and dislikes. I think the dial is somewhat underwhelming. And what I mean by that is it's just very plain. Okay, I've got my Seamaster 300M on today, and that's got laser etched dial on it, and it's pretty special, right? This is a matte blue dial with very simple indices, markers. It's got beautiful hands though, because they taper. So the hour and minute hand taper, and the seconds hand kind of glides along. So from that point of view, it's aesthetically very pleasing. You know, it's very traditional. You've got the date window at 6, and you've got, you know, ProPilot X 5 days down there as well, with the Oris at the 12. So from a dial point of view, it is a very plain watch. But that doesn't necessarily kick it out of people's radar, right? Because this, to me, is, I think, and it's $6,500, and we'll talk about that. But just in terms of the look, the feel on, the way it fits, it's an exceptionally good daily beater. It's light to wear. It really hugs your wrist. It just looks elegant on. It's very understated, I think, in a classy way. So you can kind of wear it cas, you can dress it up for the office, and you can just, I don't know, head out on the weekend for a little bit of adventure with a 100-meter water resistant. That kind of allows you to do a little bit extra with it. So from that point of view, even though the dial is underwhelming, I think that might also be a part of its genius, because they've created a very simplistic, elegant watch, but you get so much bang for your buck with the 5-day power reserve and that workhorse of a movement, essentially. I think the dial itself, even though it's underwhelming from a color point of view and the matte, I still really like it. I like sort of like the square kind of framing of the dial in the case. I think the back of the case, whilst I agree it is somewhat plain, you know, you've still got yourself an exhibition case back there, which is quite pretty, and just watching the movement is quite exciting. And, you know, you can see the bear, so that's pretty cool. But the hero of this watch is the bracelet. I'm not going to lie, I fucking love this bracelet. It tapers. It's got like an exceptionally cool clasp on it. I don't know how to describe this, guys. You guys are going to pick me up on this in the comments, but the clasp itself is just very cool. I haven't seen this kind of clasp in this shape before. And it tapers, it fits well, it's not bulky, you know, that's kind of like, look at that. It's curved, so again, it's ergonomic and it's fitting to your wrist. From that point of view, from the point of view of the aesthetic of it, the way it wears, the lightness of it, I think as an everyday wear, it's an exceptional watch. At $6,500, 1,000 Australian dollars. It's an expensive watch. I mean, you're up there with Tudor. I think the Pelagos is about the same price from memory. So I guess the question is, does Oris stack up to Tudor? Now, I don't want to get into that debate because you guys know I'm still a novice in this respect. People are going to have a strong view on that. For an Oris watch that I guess were not on my radar until I became an enthusiast, this has to be more of an enthusiast watch than an everyday Joe down the street watch at $6,500. I could have that wrong, but I just feel like if this was the old Jess, pre-YouTube channel, pre-really doing research on watch brands and watches and the quality of a watch, I wouldn't have given Oris another look, just from a branding point of view. If that makes me some kind of heathen, well, so be it. But that's the reality of things, and I think that's the marketing juggernaut of some of the other brands. So I just wonder whether it's going to hit a sweet spot. I think it's definitely going to hit a sweet spot with people who are well informed about their watches, which is now me. I can understand why my mate Jamie, who is a collector, has this watch. He lent it to me because he's like, I'm not going to wear it. It's just going to sit in the safe until such time as he does wear it, of course. But you know what I mean. So, yeah, I think from that point of view, I actually really like this watch. I opened the box and I went, and then I took it out of the box and I put it on my wrist and I was like, and I kind of like swanned around the house and I said to my wife, I got this watch to wear from my mate Jamie. You should check it out. And so I took it out to her and she put it on and she was like, it's too big for her wrist. Her wrist is smaller than mine. So it did, with the lugs kind of sitting like this, it hung over her wrist and didn't fit well. But she did really like it in terms of the feel of the watch, the weight, and the overall just simplicity and the look of it. And we hadn't even gotten into the specs and the details of it at that point, because I think my wife is probably a little bit more disinterested in those specifications than I am, because she loves watches but hasn't quite gotten into the minutiae of the detail like I have. But yeah, that is the Oris ProPilot X Caliber 400. Not exactly brand new, about 8 months or so old now, but hey, you know, I got to take it where I can get it. Great watch. If you love watches, if you're into Oris in particular, I think you've probably already checked it out. But if you're not into Oris, but you love watches and good quality watches, maybe you should check them out. Until next time, please like, subscribe, tell your friends, all of the above. If you've stayed this long, thank you. I'll see you next time.